From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
It's a $400 million bet that Pawtucket is a good fit for a professional soccer team. Dubbed Tidewater Landing, the proposal already has the support of Rhode Island's top political leaders, but is the public ready to support the huge mixed-use complex? This week on the first half of Newsmakers, the man behind Tidewater Landing, Fortuitous Partners founder Brett Johnson. Then,
I think the Rhode Island solution needs to be lifespan, canoeing together with partners.
the leader of one of Rhode Island's largest hospital groups says it's time for the state's feuding healthcare providers to again sit at the table and discuss a merger. Ted Nesi's interview with Care New England CEO Dr. James Fanale on the second half of Newsmakers. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi. Brett Johnson, founder partner of Fortuitous Partners. Good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So as we said off the top of the show, it's a $400 million redevelopment project proposed for Pawtucket. It would include, briefly, an open-air soccer stadium, hotel, sports complex, housing, offices. Rhode Island says they will chip in between $70 and $90 million. So do the quick math. That's between $310 and $330 million that you're responsible for. That is not chump change. Where's that money coming from?
Private investors that are very excited about the opportunity to invest in professional soccer, invest in this multi-purpose, multi-asset complex. So I think it's a perfect marriage between sort of public and private in a critical and fantastic area of the state.
When you say private investors, how much in dollar amount in commitments have you gotten already? Have you gotten to $300 million?
We have an incredible amount of verbal support. There's a lot of moving parts associated with raising capital. In quick math, we'll raise over $100 million, and then you have debt that you put on top of other parts of the capital stack, if you will. But the confidence that we have relative to the interest in investing in Rhode Island, in professional soccer, and then in the real estate associated with this, this is going to be a destination and a source of pride for everyone in and out of the state, anyone within New England, I would say.
So you've got commitments for over 100 already?
We've got verbal commitments in terms of families. We have investors who've been coming in and looking at this opportunity. This is a great time in the sport of soccer. A lot of investment dollars are going into professional soccer teams. And then people want to invest in other assets. If you're going to build a stadium that people are going to come, you want to capture the pregame meals. You want people to sit there and say, you know what, I want to live near the stadium. This is a fantastic place right off I-95 near the transportation hub. So as we look at it, if I took a step back, a lot of people focus on some other news with Pawtucket in the history of it. I always look at Pawtucket from a greenfield. This is the best place in the state of Rhode Island to invest money for a lot of reasons, beyond just professional soccer.
So have you ever done a project this large before? We've heard a lot about you have a team, you're part of a team in Phoenix, $400 million, or is this the biggest project you've done as the leader on it?
Several of the team members of Fortuitous have done projects much, much larger of this. One of the critical partners has done a great deal of development in and around Phoenix, Tempe Town Lake, and some iconic parts of that state. But for me personally, it's bigger for sure, but I've raised a lot of money for professional soccer. I've got a great partnership group with Phoenix Rising. We built a stadium, albeit a smaller stadium, in 51 days. I mean, it's arguably a record in that regard. So I have what I would call the requisite building blocks to bring all of this together. But from my perspective, the most fortunate thing is I have the greatest local team you could ask for, and I've got an incredible amount of political support, all the way from the mayor to the governor to the speaker to the president, and the entire Pawtucket delegation.
The Pawtucket proposal is 3 locations. We'll call them A, B, and C. C being the Apex site, as everyone knows that location. Look, that was a sticking point for the Pawtucket Stadium project that fell through. There's a sizable gap in what the owners of Apex thinks it's worth and what the city thinks it is worth. 1 through 10, 10 being most confident. How confident are you Apex will be a part of this plan at the end of the day?
10, it's just a question of when. But from my perspective, I'm a history major from Brown University, so stuttering.
I'm going to stop you. I listened to you on Dan York yesterday on his program State of Mind. You didn't sound like a 10 yesterday.
Yeah, so again, from my perspective, in the short term, I don't want to be at the mercy of those discussions, those negotiations. I want to focus when I can deliver to Rhode Island. And I have far more, if you will, site certainty relative to the Division Street property and the Tidewater property, A and B. Mm-hmm. C is a fantastic piece of property. We would love, it's part of our master plan associated with, but I don't want to turn to the state of Rhode Island and say, I'm sorry, it is out of my control. We tried, wish everyone the best. We'll come back 5 years from now if this ever solves itself. So as I look at it, We have to go all in delivering professional soccer and a mixed-use development. We have plenty of land in 2 prime sites that we can tie together with a beautiful footbridge and get activity going 365 days a year. It's not, from my perspective, it's not more complex than that. But I'm not trying to be coy. I love the Apex site. How would you not love it? But again, I don't want to sit here and say, hey, if I don't get that, I'm sorry, I'm going to take my team and go elsewhere. You know, it just doesn't make sense from my perspective.
So when you think about how the project would actually work, you know, I've covered a lot of economic development projects over the years. Sometimes there's a huge announcement, but when we get down to the details, it turns out that a lot of it's 20 years in the future, and there's a slimmed down thing that's actually going to get done up front. What do you see as the sequencing of all this? Do you want to do A, B, and C all at once if you get Apex? Or are you talking about you do A, and then if A is successful, then you do B? How would that work?
From my perspective, the stadium is critical. It all feeds off the stadium. So the great news is I've got a USL soccer franchise I'm bringing to the state of Rhode Island. We think the dialogue with National Grid's fantastic. It's been positive.
Just to be clear, because one of the sites is grid-owned and needs to be decontaminated, right?
Yeah, and they've got a pathway to do that, and they've got a budget to do it, and that was happening well before Fortuitous came to the scene. But in terms of the dialogue with them, we feel confident, optimistic that there's a pathway for a long-term partnership with them. And from a sequencing, that's where I want to focus my time and attention on right now. And so I would hope to go out sooner rather than later and say, with the city's support, commerce, et cetera, we've entered into a long-term agreement with Tidewater, with National Grid on that site, and we intend on putting shovels in the ground for a stadium on this date. And I really want to focus on that next year. And so everyone in Rhode Island could say, hey, you know what, things are moving forward. That's fantastic. And then on the Division Street, it's more clarity. The city owns that. So I feel confident relative to it. Nothing is easy. There's always so many different pieces associated with it. But if I look at those 2 pieces, what is it, $300 million project? It's still substantial, thousands of jobs. And in terms of the scope and scale and the aspirations, it's not a huge difference. It's apples and oranges, but not dramatically different.
As you point out, the soccer stadium is the cornerstone of your project here. The New England Revolution, an MLS soccer team, has been struggling to fill seats up in Foxborough at Gillette Stadium. My colleague Eli Shern reported average attendance at a Revs game declined 15% between in the last 5 years. It's down to 16,000 in 2019. Why would a minor league team be more interesting than a major league team?
Yeah, so first of all, if there was a Hall of Fame of professional sports owners, the Crafts would be in it. So I don't think you're going to find a better ownership family than the Crafts. Relative to the New England Revolution, that stadium, in general, MLS over time has learned that you're really better off in smaller soccer-specific stadiums. It's very tough to play in a stadium that's really built for NFL. And I think if the Crafts could wave a magic wand, they'd want to move probably closer to Boston, if not the urban core of that city, and build a soccer-specific stadium, which you've seen in LA and a bunch of other markets that has completely transformed MLS. From my perspective, relative to soccer in the state of Rhode Island, as I've talked about before, the demographics, the melting pot of this state is perfect for soccer. And we've seen that for a long period of time. And I'm confident when we build it, Rhode Islanders will sit there and take ownership of this team, they'll take pride in this team, and get behind it. And I've got 20 nights a year that I'm looking for about 10,000 people to show up and get behind this team. And I'm confident we're going to more than do that.
Just briefly, because you've talked about it a lot, but 30 seconds, when you talk about the demographics for the people watching, what do you mean? What do you think about as prime as why you think soccer would succeed here?
Italian, Portuguese, Colombian, West Africa. I mean, if you continue to go down the list, Hispanic, Latino, millennials, all the college students. So as I look, if you come to a Phoenix Rising game, it is fantastic to stand there in the audience and look out at the crowds. It's a demographic, it's a representative of America. And behind it, it's an exciting product. You can never have watched a game before. You come to a Phoenix Rising game and you become caught up in the fabric of it. And I'm confident we'll bottle that and package that here.
I'm curious about how this got started. There was an RFP process, but did you just organically see that somewhere and say, hey, soccer might be good? Had you been looking at this for years? Did someone call you and say, hey, we know you do soccer, come look at Pawtucket? How did it begin?
So it certainly began well before the RFP process. I've had the pride and pleasure of being on the front line of professional soccer through Phoenix Rising for over 5 years. I've seen the growth of USL, which is the league that we play in. It's been nothing short of spectacular. Similarly, MLS is hitting new highs every single day. So it's a great time to be invested in soccer, professional or otherwise, in the United States. And this is on the advent of World Cup coming back in 2026. But as I looked at the landscape, not only my ties, obviously having gone to school here, I looked at Rhode Island and I said to myself, I'd look at the media ratings. Every single week, I'd look at the top cities in the country for English Premier League games, World Cup games. Rhode Island was consistently in the top 10. And so it didn't really take much of a stretch for me to connect the dots and say, I want to bring professional soccer to Rhode Island. This is a perfect asset. And it had nothing to do with the Paw Sox. It had nothing to do, God bless Mayor Gravy, and I love his indomitable spirit. He's mayor of a phenomenal city with the riverfront, with the transportation hub right off I-95, right across the border from Massachusetts. It's a developer's dream. And from a soccer perspective, location, location, location. I can't wait to put a stadium in this site.
Maybe we should do a soccer segment on Newsmakers and boost the ratings.
Yeah, exactly. Anything for the ratings.
A big part of the project is the Opportunity Zone program. That was also a big part of the president's tax reform law. If this development comes together, do you have President Trump to thank for it?
I have both sides of the aisle to thank for it. I think the only aspect of the Trump tax bill that truly had bipartisan support was the Opportunity Zone program. It's got incredible support from both sides, and as it should. This is bringing capital that is sitting fallow on the sidelines, getting it to move into areas that, if not for this program, might not see the investment. So I think this is Exhibit A of why the Opportunity Zone program is so fantastic. We will create thousands of jobs, hundreds of millions of economic activity that, again, if not for the added benefit of the OZ program, makes it tough to pencil out. And so I'm excited about it, and I've been an advocate since I heard that program about how it can move the needle of bringing private investment to create what I call public goods, professional soccer stadiums, mixed-use facilities, et cetera.
You got a huge amount of attention at the Phoenix Rising Stadium when you did $1 beers, which it's not necessarily hard for you to imagine why that might be popular, but are you going to bring $1 beers to your Rhode Island stadium?
I think I'd be foolish not to bring that to our stadium, So it was a phenomenal promotion.
Is the beer any good, or are you serving like the swill?
It's Bud Light. No, I mean, it was certainly none of our fans were complaining, and we had a long winning streak associated with it. We got a lot of attention to it, but it's fantastic. Going to a soccer game for the uninitiated, it's an experience. You see the supporters, you see the drums, you see the smoke. You throw in good beer at a good price, and it's a nice mix. And everyone, I can't wait to bring that to the state of Rhode Island. And I've already seen the response. I knew it would be good. It's been exponentially stronger than I thought it would be.
All right, less than a minute left, Brett. What keeps you up at night on this project?
That's a great question. All the different moving parts keep me up at night. But again, on a road basis, I'm fortunate. I've got the best team. I get to be, at this point, the face of all of this. I've got so many incredible people that are part of the Fortuitous team that give me confidence. I've got great support. Again, I can't give enough platitudes relative to the mayor and the governor and the speaker and the president, the entire delegation. So I think we're all holding hands and we're going to make things happen. And from my perspective, what is the path of least resistance for delivering a professional soccer team in a short period of time? And then everything else can effectively be the cherry on top of the sundae. But let's get that. And we've got the political appetite and we've got the support to make it happen. So I'm optimistic we're going to do it.
All right, Brett Johnson, founder of Fortuitous Partners. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. When we come back, new insight into the soap opera known as the Hospital Ownership Groups in Rhode Island. Ted Nesi's interview with Dr. James Fanale of Care New England. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. A top hospital executive is hoping to get the two major healthcare providers in the state, you know them as Lifespan and Care New England, back at the table for merger talks. The CEO of Care New England revealed his plan during a one-on-one interview with Target 12 investigator Ted Nesi. Here is Ted's interview with Dr. James Fanale.
You've told me in the past, Care New England still has challenges. It's certainly not out of the woods long term. When you look forward at the future and think about making the organization sustainable, what's your biggest concern or what's the biggest challenge you think the organization faces over the longer term?
I think the financial situation's still worrisome. Having a couple of years in a row where at least we're in the black on a fairly small basis, that's not enough to really grow and sustain your business. It's not enough. Then we have all these concerns, like all of us do, especially in Rhode Island, with potential cuts to Medicare reimbursements or disproportionate share, cuts on our 340B pharmacy programs. If all the federal cuts came along and were enacted, which I'm assuming and hoping they're not, that puts us even bigger jeopardy. So I think the concerns I have are about the financing of healthcare in the future.
So listening to that, do you think, and you and I have had this conversation before, but do you think over the long term, Care New England could remain independent as it is today and be financially viable?
I don't think so. I've said that before. I think that, people are excited and ecstatic that we turned a profit of $5 million. Better than losing 50 or 60, which we were a couple years ago, but that's not enough to sustain ourselves. That's not enough to fund the capital requirements we have. That was why the Brigham Health deal was so important, because we needed a capital infusion to improve our organization. So I don't think the long-term plan is that we'd be alone.
So let's talk about the merger discussions over the summer. Governor Raimondo effectively pulled the plug on that Brigham Health merger when she asked you guys forcefully to rejoin talks with Lifespan and try that again. In the end, the board at Care New England decided to pull out of those talks. You yourself have been in the news reports in the months since, with some people saying that what killed that merger was your desire to be the CEO of the new entity. Is that true?
I would not say that that's totally accurate, no. There are many complex issues that were at bay when we were talking about this. To single out one issue as being the reason that the merger talks broke down is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. There are a lot of financial concerns. If you look about the financial situation where Lifespan's in and we are in, how does it make sense that you take an organization that's barely turning a profit and one that now Lifespan's losing money? How does putting them together ensure financial success in the future? So I would say that there were multiple issues at hand as to why this didn't happen.
Did you want the job?
I didn't even get there. I think we wanted to be involved in a transition. We wanted to help make sure that everything was stable. One thing I've said, and I'll say it again, our concern was making sure to do what's best for our patients and do what's best for our staff. And I assured them that we'd make sure that we would continue to be safe going forward, secure financially, and that we'd be able to continue to service our patients well. That was the most important piece. And I don't think we were comfortable at the end of those discussions that we'd be able to fulfill that goal.
People are going to listen and say, okay, well, he says he doesn't think over the long term they can stay independent. The Brigham Health deal fell apart because of those merger discussions, and then those merger discussions didn't go successfully, and now there's a bit of almost a stalemate, it seems like, with where the hospital sector goes in Rhode Island. What do you think should happen? Should there be more merger talks? Should you go back to Brigham Health? What should Care New England do?
So first and foremost, we're going to spend the next year really making sure our business is as tightly run as possible, as high quality as the best service possible, and then financially secure. That's the most important thing for us right now, is to take a year where we just spend the time taking care of our patients well and emphasizing the three things that are important to us: quality, service, and access. So let's make sure we accentuate the performance on those things and to get that working as well as we can. Then I think it's time to talk about the future.
Well, in the future, what do you, could you see a merger?
Yes.
With Lifespan?
I do believe in the Rhode Island solution, but I think the Rhode Island solution needs to be Lifespan, Care New England together with partners. Okay, I think we need a regional solution. The financial situation in Rhode Island of the two largest healthcare systems is not as strong as it needs to be, and I don't see how putting those together makes a really good financial future. I think, however, if we combine our resources, combine our efforts together with a fairly large and very powerful and very strong, high-quality organization like Partners, I think that's the solution we should proceed down the path with.
If someone called you and said, let's try that again, let's have those discussions, is Care New England ready to do that?
So I've called the leadership of Lifespan 4 to 5 times to begin to have discussions about how we might work better together.
And what response have you?
We haven't met.
You haven't met? You
Nope.
haven't, so there's no talks happening right now?
Nope. I had a preliminary conversation probably a couple months ago where I've attempted to have a meeting, and we just haven't been able to get together.
How about Partners? Have you talked to them?
Oh yes, as I've said before, we've said this before, we continue our relationship with the Brigham and Partners. We meet on a regular basis with the Brigham because they're essential to what we've done at Kent and how we've turned some of the services around. And so we continue to talk. Have we talked about what the future relationship might be? No, because I think, remember, they've just gone through their rebranding with the Mass General and Brigham, so they're concentrated on that. There's a new CEO at Partners Health, and then we've exited the other discussions in July, so I think we're all setting ourselves for the future.
Let me ask you, while we're talking about Lifespan, as you mentioned, they lost $35 million last year. The numbers were even worse on their operations. And the news release, I would say, pointed repeatedly toward factors that would involve Care New England as reasons for that. First and foremost, the closing of Memorial Hospital, which we've talked about many times. But the argument I heard from Lifespan last week was CNE closed Memorial, and basically those mainly Medicaid patients went from the C&E system at Memorial to the Lifespan system at Marion, Rhode Island Hospital, and has destabilized us.
When did that happen?
You closed Memorial, I believe, the end of 2017.
We closed Memorial Hospital in January of 2018. The issue about where the patients went for emergency room care started on January 1st, 2018, not in 2019. So to sort of use that as a major reason, I have issues with that. You also have to understand the history at Memorial was a lot of the patients that were admitted there had already moved to Miriam or Roger Williams, I would say the Medicare commercial patients. So when we closed Memorial and we went through the reverse CON process, we had an average census there in the teens. It was unsustainable. I wasn't here in 2014 or 15 when the discussions about, I think Lifespan was interested in acquiring Memorial, Care New England. I don't think anyone thought that Memorial Hospital, even at that time, was going to be viable long term.
Do you accept that a strain has been put on the Miriam in particular by Memorial closing?
From my information, I think the emergency room has obviously seen more visits per year, probably from the patients that used to go to Memorial. I don't think the inpatient census has gone up because of that at all.
Another criticism from Lifespan, if you guys, one we've heard before, you alluded to it earlier, is they said, again, they feel that a lot of tertiary care is being sent to Boston. This gets complicated, and I'm always seeing numbers flying back and forth, but bottom line, do you think patient referral trends out of the Care New England hospitals have changed in recent years in a way that are sending more patients to Boston that might have gone to a Lifespan hospital before?
Absolutely, unequivocally, no.
Really?
Absolutely, unequivocally, no. Let me explain.
Because they are absolutely adamant about this. They say
okay,
it
well then
constantly.
show me the data because I have data. So what data sets do I have? So I have Integra is an accountable care organization. We have claims data from 3 or 4 sources. We have direct claims data. And on the cardiac surgical procedures we send out of Boston, out of Warwick, 20 to 22% go to Boston. It's the same number in 17, same number in 18. There was no change. I think about 28 cases went to Boston, 178 went to Rhode Island Hospital. Okay, so I have that data. It stayed true. It's not changed at all. Here's the issue. When we just had a review by an outside organization looking at the needs and healthcare needs of Pawtucket and Central Falls, they point out that the number of admissions to Rhode Island Hospital went down by over 1,000 in 18. Kent's volume went up by 700 cases. We're doing cases at Kent that probably heretofore were done at Lifespan hospitals. 300 plus colorectal surgeries, 200 thoracic surgeries. We did 120 emergency stents last year at Kent. And that's because stuff's being done at Kent. It's not going to Boston, but I think if we're doing that many cases at Kent, keeping care local, obviously that volume has gone down to the other hospitals. It's clear and convincing to me.
So, you know, when you step back, there'll be people watching this and they'll say to themselves, gosh, like, you know, we want our hospitals to be strong and successful, and year after year, Ted pops up on TV saying this one's fighting with this one, these merger talks have ended, this one's losing money. I mean, you know, do you see a path forward, or are all the relationships so broken, and you know, is there such dysfunction at this point in this sector that it's just going to drift on as it is right now?
I would hope not. I mean, truthfully, Lifespan does a great job taking care of patients. They're a vital part of the state, as are we. I think when you do, people talk about, you brought up the question about, did it break down because I wanted to run the new organization? Relationships built on trust. It's about relationships. If you're going to do a business deal, the relationships are of the utmost importance. That said, I'm optimistic we can sit together. I've told you, I reached out. I want to sit down with the other side, and I think the 2 largest healthcare systems could come together. Leadership needs to sit down, talk to each other, and see what's the path forward. But you can't have a path forward unless you can sit down and talk.
So if Tim Babineau calls you tomorrow, do you take a meeting?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I've called him 5 times, so absolutely.
Dr. James Fanale interview, Ted's interview with Dr. James Fanale of Care New England. The ending there, he said he's reached out to him 5 times. You walked out of that interview. You reached out to Lifespan. What did they tell you?
Lifespan says they don't see anything to talk about right now. They they just fundamentally disagree with how much Care New England wants Partners, which is Brigham and Women's, to be part of the conversation right now in Rhode Island. Lifespan sees Partners as a mortal threat, as a competitor, trying to take higher, more profitable care out of Rhode Island up to Boston. They think Care New England is kind of the nose under the camel tent with that for Partners. And so they say, look, we just had these merger talks over the summer. Care New England's the one who pulled out of that. Now they're making various moves that harm us. Why are we want to sit down with them? So I think it does feel like there's a bit of a stalemate right now.
So what would you be looking for? I'm not brimming with confidence that they're going to be, after listening to that interview and what you just said, 30 seconds here, Ted. What would you be looking for that maybe the winds are changing a little bit?
I think something external has to force them back to the table if they're going to be.
Didn't that already happen with the governor?
It did, and so it would have to happen again in a different way. Either the governor, someone like Sheldon Whitehouse, the Rhode Island Foundation, some other actor would have to somehow convince Babineau and them and their board chairs, Larry Abbott and company, that there's a reason they should sit down and they have to do it. Wouldn't be surprised to see it maybe happen at some point, but it's clear that there's a long way to go before they can have fruitful discussions.
Ted, great interview with Dr. James Fanale. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. If you missed any of it, it's on WPRI.com. For Ted Nesi, I'm Tim White. We'll see you next week on Newsmakers.